Oh, what's going on, y'all? Minutes with Mellon. Take a long ass video, make it short. So, this shit is crazy. This is the Fisa that they're voting on. Basically, so the FBI can just spy on whoever the fuck they want, whenever they want. They don't even know how to use it properly. Listen to this shit. This shit is crazy.
Isn't he? We should all really feel badly for him. Now the extension of Fisa is before our Congress, which gives broad powers to our intelligence agencies to not only spy on foreign adversaries, but of course also on Americans. Edward Snowden calls it a red alert moment for the United States. And he said, quote, "The NSA is just days away from taking over the internet. It's not on the front page of any newspaper because no one has noticed." He said, "If you work as a U.S. tech firm, this bill could transform your whole company into a spy machine, whether you like it or not, and will be voted on in days. The entire industry needs to be lobbying to kill this thing. This is what a red alert moment looks like," Snowden said. Someone who's really, I think, made it his mission to educate all of us about Fisa and how damaging it is to the United States is former FBI agent Kyle Seraphin, host of the Kyle Seraphin Show, and joins us right now to talk more about this. Kyle, great to see you. Welcome back here to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Clayton. Look forward to it.
So you've, of course, really been trying to educate all of us about this carve-out, this 702 provision, which would allow, which has been allowing the FBI and intelligence agencies to spy illegally on Americans without a warrant. We saw the fight unfolding in the House of Representatives last week. We saw Congressman Thomas Massie, Representative Luna, and others standing up saying, "We want a warrant. You must get a warrant for this." That, of course, was sidestepped, and now the House of Representatives looks like it's going to move forward with this and then pass this over to the Senate, where this will become law, another extension of multiple years. Where do things stand right now? And then I'll ask you how to get into the nitty-gritty. Why is this so bad for America?
Sure. Well, as you said, people are fundamentally making disingenuous arguments. I think that's the real problem. We're seeing that members of Congress, either they don't understand what it is they're voting on, or they are voting on it in bad faith. But we are going to see this thing passed. I think there's no question about that. And it is going to continue this unconstitutional program. I mean, it's actually unconstitutional on its face. And so when we see people making arguments about it, and you see the arguments are so simplistic, and they don't actually reflect the reality, it makes me think that none of them actually have gone into a skiff, seen what the day-to-day operations of the NSA and of the FBI and that conjunction, that crossover with 702 looks like. I would just be really curious to know if a Mike Johnson went into a skiff and was shown, I don't know that he was blackmailed. I think it's probably more about money. That's usually how these things work. It's usually much more simple and less conspiratorial than people would like it to be. But my curiosity is this: did he actually see, and was he actually convinced that there were cases that 702 FISA stopped from happening? Terrorist cases, terrorist plots that were foiled, that some American lives were saved? Because I've never seen the evidence of it. And I did counterterrorism for 3 years all over the country, and then I also spent 2 years sitting in a skiff reading this stuff. So it doesn't make any sense to me, having been on the other end of it.
Yeah, you've been in the skiff many, many times. And when Mike Johnson last week came out and said publicly, "Look, I was with you guys. I wanted to end this, right? I was on your side of the table. And then I went into the skiff," he said, "and then I saw stuff that absolutely terrified me. And now I've completely did a 180. I've flip-flopped. And I saw your tweets on this. You said, What are you talking about? I've been in the skiff for many, many years. I've never seen anything." Do you think that he's lying?
I don't know what he's doing, and I don't like to ascribe motives without having evidence. So I just look at what he said, and then I look at the people like Chris Wray who are out there and basically either lie or lie by omission to the American people for a living. It's my kind of contention at this point. The director of the FBI's primary job is ensuring that he's not the last director of the FBI. That's kind of what he does. And that may be a fundamentally profound thing for people to grasp. But his argument is on behalf of his agency, on behalf of adding funding to it, building a new headquarters, establishing its continued existence, when there are credible claims that it has stepped over the constitutional boundaries. And as we talked about the last time that you and I sat down, it is a secret police force for the federal government's interests. It is a law enforcement agency that also has access to raw intelligence data and is able to generate criminal cases from otherwise uninvestigatable topics. That should scare the crap out of all Americans. It's not American to have some group that's able to go out there and query you for no particular reason, in violation of the Fourth Amendment and then generate a criminal case on something they had no right to look at in the first place.
Well, it blows my mind, too, that you have a Republican House of Representatives, which arguably this was used to spy on the President of the United States, then Donald Trump. And to me, this seems like there's no way this is going to pass. And here we are, passing the House of Representatives, going over to the Senate, where it looks like it will likely pass there as well, head on to the president, and he will extend this. When you're talking to former or current members of the FBI, do they want this? I mean, the argument from Chris Wray is we need this for American safety, right? This is the argument.
Shit.
Otherwise, you're not safe unless we have this carve-out 702. We can spy on Americans illegally.
I don't know that agents have specifically told me they want it or don't want it. It's a tool. It exists. You know, it's the status quo, but it's not the status quo for the entirety of the FBI. That's actually something that people should probably understand. The status of FISA 702, which is different from the traditional FISA warrant. The actual true FISA, the full FISA, as we talked about previously, that is a rigorous process. It may be convoluted if you lie in it, like they did with Kevin Kleinsmith and go in and flip an email so it says the opposite of what it stated. But the actual process of going in front of the FISC, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, it is an ex parte hearing where only the government presents their side. But they actually have to meet a burden that shows that it is justifiable to engage in this very aggressive spying techniques. And we're using the word spying loosely, but it's intelligence gathering. We're putting in microphones. We are going and capturing all of your transactions from your phone. You know, all these different sort of tools that are incredibly invasive, probably the most invasive thing you can do. 702 FISA is very different than that. And everyone that is making these arguments in Congress that I'm seeing are stating, well, it's going after bad guys and foreign terrorists and intelligence operatives. And you go, okay, fine. Well, they don't have any constitutional liberties. A Chinese spy in China or a Russian spy in Russia or Iranian operative in Iran doesn't have any constitutional protections. But what about when they're talking to Americans? There's somebody on the other end of that email. And most of what intelligence work is doing is not overtly saying, I am this person, I represent this government, I am looking to corrupt you. Would you be willing to take money and sell out your nation? That's not how intelligence works. That's so on the nose, it doesn't work. So it's almost always about eliciting information. It's about, can I softly touch you and get you to send me things as maybe I'm a foreign journalist, or maybe I'm a foreign business person, and this would be you're not actually participating in something. If actor from investigation on me, the American citizen who's being targeted, and be able to have access to all of my communications without having a warrant when they think that I might be engaged in something that I'm just being conned into. This is really the question that it should come down to. If there is enough burden for the FBI to go after it, it's actually not that big of a deal to go get a warrant. The problem is they're not going to actually meet the warrant requirements because they're not going to be able to find probable cause that a federal crime has been committed.
So that's why they're really pushing back against this warrant provision, of course, brought up by Congressman Massey and others pushing for this, which is, if you want to then look at the American who might be the target of this, just go get a warrant. That's it. By the way, they put a carve out in there for members of Congress, which is hilarious, right? So they carved that out so that members of Congress would have to be notified. We're looking into this. We need you to sign off and agree to it. Why not for regular Americans? Why just this carve out for members of Congress? It's absurd.
It looks like they're buying them off. The other thing is this actually changed fundamentally. You can actually find things on articles like TechCrunch. I'll send you a link to it. But these articles had been written, and people recognized that there was a change in the surveillance state and the technological abilities of the FBI right at the end of the Obama era, just about to walk into Trump. And so the scary thing was for the people on the political left, they were like, oh my God, Obama is handing over the keys to the federal surveillance state, and Trump is going to have all this unfettered access to raw FISA with the FBI. Well, why would that happen if you're Barack Obama and you're looking at a Donald Trump presidency coming in? We already know that the Obama administration basically set up to sabotage Donald Trump, that they investigated his campaign, that the FBI treated Donald Trump's campaign and Hillary Clinton's campaigns differently. One got defensive briefings saying, hey, you might be targeted. The other one got investigated and had FISAs into Carter Page and so on. So we saw fundamentally different treatment between the left and the right. And so to assume that the surveillance state and the intelligence apparatus is operating in a good faith, right down the middle, nonpartisan way is false. The NSA's database of 702 data, which is literally me looking into your email box. People have to understand what raw FISA is.
Here it is.
It's exactly what you see. I get your spam. I get the notes back and forth to your mom. I get the notes that you and your wife are exchanging, which is otherwise privileged material, and your lawyers. I see all of it raw with no filter. And then I, as an FBI agent, have to decide whether or not it is, in fact, something that I have to, quote unquote, minimize. And I'll just tell you, as someone who did this for 2 years in a skiff working against the Chinese threat, I have a pretty high IQ. I'm a better than average learner. And I sat in that skiff and I thought I was minimizing things appropriately by using the protocols that were taught to me. By the way, I had a native Chinese speaking agent as a training agent who didn't know how to use the programs either. And it didn't seem like anybody on my squad knew how to use them. So when they did a Fisa audit of me on my squad about what I had been doing with 702 Fisa, I failed it miserably. And so did everybody else because we weren't minimizing it properly, because it doesn't even do the thing you think. When you click through the minimization process, it doesn't result in it actually doing the thing that it's supposed to do within that software. So that's fairly incredible. Wow. But we failed Fisa audits over and over again because the software may have failed us. But then you're just basically relying on, is Kyle Seraphin, is fill-in-the-blank FBI agent that is looking at this stuff, a person of good moral repute who is not going to go out and abuse the process and build criminal investigations when they should be looking for intelligence? And that's literally a gamble on every single person's character. When we know that they have unfettered access to raw intelligence, it's not like it shows up and it says, person A instead of Clayton Morris. It shows up and it says Clayton Morris at your Yahoo, at your Gmail, at your fill-in-the-blank email address. And I'm reading what's in your box. And then I have to decide whether or not I'm going to handle it properly. And if I choose not to, there's no guardrails to stop it. That happened in 2016 going into the Trump presidency before he was inaugurated. And people were worried, oh my God, will he abuse it? The answer was, it was put in place to abuse the process and go after him. And we saw that happen. That's what Crossfire Hurricane was all about. It was about seeing a weaponized DOJ that never was handed over to another administration. It never answered to Donald Trump, maybe nominally, but not in functionality. That's what a deep state is. And when people understand that, it makes far more sense. Look, if the political left, like the far wing of the political left, and the people on the the ACLU, and the people on the far end of the right, which is people who just believe in the Constitution now, like me, are in total agreement, and the 80% of Congress in the middle wants to vote for this package and wants to move it forward, something is wrong. That's sort of what we talk about with a uniparty. The status quo is more accurate than uniparty. The status quo people are keeping a status quo, but that's a new status quo since 2016.
Something has got to be going on here. That something doesn't smell right at all. And Marjorie Taylor Greene talked about this with Tucker just a few weeks ago. Is there something that they have on him? Is he being blackmailed? How do you flip-flop on almost every position after taking your speakership and leaving the American people behind? Something is going on here. I want to get your thoughts on what Edward Snowden said, specifically about the NSA is just days away from taking over the internet. Is he being hyperbolic here, or is he being accurate?
I think there's always a little bit of trying to shock people into movement because the American people are pretty complacent right now. And as long as Netflix turns on and as long as Costco still has food and, Uber Eats is still functioning, then a lot of people will not do anything. So there's a possibility that's sort of the hyperbolic push of taking over the internet. But we've seen very, very big creeps in destruction of our freedom of speech, in government weighing in on censorship. That's why we have the Missouri v. Biden case going on right now. There's some obvious red flags. So I think it's a little bit of both, if I'm going to be real honest about it. But as you mentioned earlier, these folks, what do they have on them? I can't rule out that they're just being lied to. The FBI will present this really good game as we've got all this danger going on and look at what we're saving. And then you go see what the actual actionable items are in the counterterrorism space, for example. And they went after a kid in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, who was 18 years old, which means he was being investigated as a minor. And the first line of the probable cause statement in his arrest warrant states that he was making contact with an online CHS, a confidential human source, who worked for the FBI representing that person to be ISIS. So, the threat isn't really that big when your big arrest in the terrorism world is that you found an 18-year-old kid whose claim was he was going to light a sword on fire. He was going to use flaming weapons. That's an actual quote from the probable cause statement. And he was going to obtain firearms by hitting his dad in the head with a lead pipe, because apparently he, watches Clue or played the board game and thought that was the way that you obtain weapons, right? This is not serious stuff. If you have to manufacture terrorism in order to show people how bad the terrorism problem is, that's the self-licking ice cream cone of Washington, D.C. That's that Beltway mentality, which is like, we've been doing this forever. Why would we not do it? And then you just look, and what are Johnson's priorities? $100 million in Ukrainian aid and Israeli aid and so on, funding a foreign war, and then calling yourself a wartime president. I mean, is he talking about the American Civil War? Is he talking about the foreign wars? And if he's serious, why not just a declaration of war? Because that's actually in the Constitution. They could do that.
It's unbelievable. Well, this is about to happen, and I don't know if there's anything that we can do to stop it. I mean, we've been calling on everyone to call their representatives, call their members of the Senate, call their offices, flood their offices with it. When you have a Speaker of the House that knows that the American people don't want this, and he's still tabled motions to vacate. He's putting all of this through to ram it through because he saw something. He saw something that terrified him. Kyle, great to see you as always. I encourage all of our audience to pay attention to what Kyle says on his show. Very, very.
This is literally the destruction of the internet and the downfall of America. This goes through. This is bad. This sucks. This country's going to fucking shit, dude. Oh, that's funny. But yeah, I just thought I'd share that. I thought that was a good one. Alright, I'll see y'all next one. You can subscribe.